So, man, a lot to talk to you about. We're just coming off UFC Fight Night 209, aka UFC Paris. Obviously, we saw a big heavyweight fight there between Ciryl Gane and Tai Tuivasa. So I wanted to bring you on to get your thoughts on that, plus the state of the heavyweight division, because I feel like there's a lot going on, plus a few other things. So first of all, you were watching the fights. Overall, what'd you think of Gane? What'd you think of his performance? First fight back since losing to Francis Ngannou. How'd you see him? How'd you think his performance was?
I thought he looked great. Other than the one little hiccup, but fighting at the heavyweight division against a guy who's ranked number 3, you're going to see maybe a little adversity here and there. So, I honestly, for him, like as a coach, I think that you would like to see some adversity for him and see how he fights his way through it and bounces back, and he did just that. So, myself and Dean Thomas did a little breakdown fight week on kind of what we thought the approach might be from Gane and Tai, and we were pretty spot on with that. I think Gane used his kick game as almost like as jabs and feelers and staying long, as well as occupying the right hand by Tai with the left high kick, and did a really good job, man. So he was able to catch Tai coming in, rushing in some of those counters, and using his lateral movement, which I think he's great at. So I think he showed some improvements. I think he looked great in the fight. And to me, man, it was a really good main event.
Yeah, it was a great fight. A lot of action. I actually didn't expect that from Ciryl Gane. I mean, you've studied him obviously in the lead up to that first to that fight with Francis Ngannou. I don't want to say he's boring, right? But he does like to be very cautious and doesn't take that many risks. So I was surprised to see him in some instances take a lot of risk there with Tai Tuivasa, who we know obviously packs a ton of power. Overall, you kind of mentioned it there. Did you really see an improved version of Ciryl Gane in there?
Well, I think the improvements were the adversity, and we haven't really seen him in a lot of trouble other than, obviously the wrestling with Francis, but in the striking department where, he got caught with that big overhand, he got sat down, the way he was able to kind of get his wits about him, but also stay on the offensive and then immediately hurt Tai with the body kick. I thought all those things were very impressive in the action, right? Like in the chaos, he was able to kind of get calm and recalibrate and get right back to what he does best. And that to me was very impressive. Those are things that it's like going to college, man. Like you just can't pay for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I share the same sentiments. I thought his performance was great. In fact, after the fact, I tweeted, Ciryl Gane is the future of the UFC heavyweight division. And you're like, yeah, I've heard that before, which is obviously true. That's something that a lot of people were saying prior to the fight with Ngannou, and we saw how that turned out. I just wanted to clarify on that. I do think that apart from the champion, in my opinion, Gane is probably the best heavyweight right now outside of the champion. And I do think Ngannou's further along his career. He's got 20 fights. Ciryl Gane is only like about a little bit over 10, I believe. I do think at some point we'll see Ngannou retire and we'll see Gane continuing to fight. So I don't know if he's going to pass the torch physically, if he'll beat him again, or if he just retires and then we'll just see Gane take over that division. But I do see him as sort of the best out there outside of the champion, Francis Ngannou. And to be clear, beat him with one knee. So very, very impressive. I don't know if you share the same sentiment, like, hey, look, this guy is the best in the division outside of our guy.
I think there's a lot of really good guys in that division right now.
Yeah.
I really do, man. I think the unfortunate outcome in the Aspinall and Curtis Blades fight, because I really wanted to see both of those guys be able to perform. So Curtis Blades is right there again, and obviously the kind of the wild card, I guess, is going to be Jon Jones if he ever shows up. And then you have, in my opinion, the greatest to ever do it in Stipe Miocic waiting there too. So I think the heavyweight division is actually pretty thick right now. There's a lot of good talent and a lot of good guys coming up to the ranks, and Ciryl Gane is definitely one of those.
Yeah, for sure. No, there's definitely a lot of moving pieces. And let me ask you about that. Has it been kind of weird? Because usually, like, the how the champions work, right? Like, he beats whatever number one contender is available, and then you kind of know who's up next, or at least maybe two guys. But we got Jon Jones, we got Stipe. We don't know when they're gonna come back. Tom Aspinall looks like a monster, but knee injury. Curtis Blades, picked up a victory, right? I mean, not his fault, but still, he's lingering around. You got Ciryl Gane, who bounced back. it's kind of hard to really put a guy and be like, okay, this was the next one. Is that tough as a coach to not really know what's going to come next with Ngannou? I mean, keeping in mind he stays with the UFC, obviously.
No, not necessarily. And actually, for me, Danny, it's kind of fun because it makes me pay attention. You know, it makes me pay attention to the landscape. I think it makes me a better coach because I just get to study more and watch more and see what these guys are doing on a day-to-day. But obviously, I have guys in all different weight classes, but my main guy is going to be Francis, and staying ahead of that, I know is going to be important for me. But you know, the whole landscape to me is always kind of ever changing because, you know, when we beat Stipe, we were told it was Jon Jones next, and that fight didn't happen. And then Ciryl Gane in the meantime was kind of coming up through the ranks pretty quickly. So, you know, there could be a curveball thrown at you at any time. So paying attention to the division for me is just my job, and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, Ngannou's status, it's a little bit unknown yet. We don't know if he's going to stick around with the UFC. We know that he's there's things in the contract situation that he's trying to get worked out. Overall, have you talked to him recently? And is he back to training? How is he doing knee-wise and health-wise?
He gets back this week, so his birthday is actually tomorrow. Obviously, we saw him in Paris, so he'll get back hopefully in the next couple of days. And then when he gets home, gets settled back in, then me and him will sit down with the team and figure out kind of. I think he goes back to LA to get his knee reassessed by Dr. Elatraj, and then we'll know kind of where he's at. I believe right now he's 5 months, maybe 6 months post-op. I think he had it like late March, so it'd be late September will be 6 months. So I mean, he's still kind of a ways away when you think about it, with an ACL injury and a MCL injury as well. So we're just kind of at the mercy of the doctors and the rehab and seeing where he's at. So we haven't really put a time on anything, but the nice thing is that he's getting back in the gym and just getting to work on some stuff. And even if it's just hands or heavy bag work, but, you know, getting back in the room is going to be nice.
Yeah. And he's interested in staying with the UFC. He's been very vocal about that. The only thing that he sort of wants on his contract as a guaranteed, he's like, look, I want to box. I want to stay with the UFC, but boxing is a must for me. That's something that I want to try in the near future. You're obviously his MMA coach, but as far as boxing, do you guys ever talk about that? Like, hey, you know, I'd like for you to be my coach as well if we go down the boxing route.
Well, I think that'll definitely be Dewey more than anything. So we already have it kind of built in within the family, where Dewey's been a great boxing coach himself, but great boxer. But you know, it is a family affair when it comes to that stuff. You know, we have guys that are involved in the corner that more, you know, like Markel. Markel's a great piece of that family. Doesn't necessarily need to be in the corner, but he's a guy that Francis is always gonna look to and lean on in those moments. So. You know, myself, like I went to Joe Joyce's gym with Francis. We watched the boxing rounds. We did everything together. I know Dewey's going to kind of fit more of that role when it comes to the boxing element, but, you know, I'm going to be there no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. And usually when, you know, media or just fans, you know, talk about like an MMA fighter crossing over to the boxing world, they kind of roll their eyes a little bit, right? But I feel like with the heavyweights is a little bit different, right? I mean, obviously Ngannou has tremendous knockout power. He did start his fighting career as a boxer, if I'm not mistaken. Do you feel like there is a little something different to Francis Ngannou crossing over to the boxing world compared to maybe, you know, Conor or maybe Usman during his time, talking about Canelo and all this?
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of the level of the guy that you're trying to box right away. You know, if it's about the money, if it's about the big names, or the big this or big that, but I will never doubt Francis for anything. You know, there's things that he's done and accomplished in his life that most people would never even dream of trying or doing. So when this man puts his mind to something and he wants to accomplish a goal, you know, I'll never doubt this man. And you know, he's done some great things throughout his career, even at the knee injury, man. Like myself and Dewey were freaking out, like, bro, you got to pull out. You can't even walk. He's like, no, I'll be fine. I'll win this fight. You know, so this guy's somebody that I'll never doubt in anything he puts his mind to.
Yeah, for sure. No, he's definitely overcome a lot of adversity and you know, a guy that's, you know, achieved so much considering where he came from, for sure. And let me ask you about Jon Jones. Obviously, I think that's probably like the biggest fight you can make at heavyweight, Jon Jones and Ngannou. But as far as from like a technical standpoint, is that like a fight that you really want, just given the nature of Jon Jones' status? I mean, he's regarded by many as the greatest to ever do it. And I guess as a coach, as somebody that's going to be planning or potentially planning against him in the future, that must be really interesting, right? Trying to solve that puzzle, which no one has been able to do. Technically, he is well, technically he's not undefeated, but I mean,
Yeah, yeah. No, it is, and it is the fight that for me personally, I think Jon Jones is the greatest to ever do it. So as a competitor, I want to compete against the best, and I think that is Jon Jones. I have the utmost respect for Brandon Gibson and Jon, and everything that these guys put together. And if you want to claim your stake at one of the pound for pound best to ever do it, you're gonna have to beat the guy. So for me, it's just a great challenge. I love that to be able to break that fight down and put our best foot forward and try to go get a win against a guy like him. So that is the fight. I think that is the fight to make. I think it's him and or Stipe. I think you got to give credit to Stipe for what he's done in the division, but you just don't know with the timeline and what the UFC wants to push. But I feel like that's the fight to make.
Yeah, certainly. And I remember when I don't even know. I feel like the pandemic has really warped my perception of time. But whenever Francis Ngannou wasn't champion and Jon Jones was still contemplating a move up to heavyweight, they had talked about it and they had gone back and forth on Twitter. And I remember the sort of the hype around that. And at the time, Stipe was champion, but it almost felt like a fight with Ngannou and Jon Jones non-title fight was bigger than anything you could do in the division. Obviously, all respect to Stipe, one of the greatest to ever do it at heavyweight, but just Ngannou has that, that appeal, obviously, with all that power and everything. And I guess what I wanted to ask you, that challenge of Jon Jones, I think it's very interesting. I don't want to doubt the man, one of the greatest to ever do it. But there has been, some, I guess, his recent fights haven't been maybe his best. Some people have even made the case that, hey, Dominic Reyes did enough to beat him. Thiago Santos did enough to beat him. So I guess just kind of forgetting about history and just focusing on the present or the now. What do you make of Jon Jones as far as like the fighter today and his most recent fights?
Yeah, I don't know a lot of that kind of that MMA math, if you will, and if you look at like Dom's last couple fights and Santos's couple fights, is that, in relation to where Jon's at in his career? I think it's a motivational thing for Jon, to be quite honest with you, is where his head's at. And I think that he's probably one of the best problem solvers inside the cage to ever do it, to be quite fair. I've seen him make in-round adjustments, in-fight adjustments, and again, like, I think the guy finds ways to win with his skill set, and he can just call audibles at will. So for me, I really just wonder if the motivation was there, if the burnout might have been there, him taking this time off, he might come back reinvigorated. So I think there's a lot of things that come into play, Danny, but all the while you have to give respect on his body of work and know that, shit, man, he's in my opinion, the greatest to ever do it. So you can't take this man lightly ever.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in my opinion, it's GSP, but if someone says Jon Jones, I have no problem with that. I think it's between both those guys. I mean, they've done so much. I would say GSP just because he did have a second title, but at the same time, like the way Jon Jones just ran through the 205 division in his time was just something that we've never seen. I mean, just complete dominance. Do you, it almost feels like there's so many things at play, right? That nothing's guaranteed in the world of mixed martial arts. But do you feel like that fight is bound to happen between Ngannou and Jones?
I mean, you would like to think so, but if you would ask me that 2 years ago, I would have said yes. Now, you never know, man. And I think that it hopefully it is likely to come down. We were able to sit down with Hunter and Dana, and after we fought Gane, and they explained a lot of things on what went on and behind the scenes, that why that fight didn't transpire, and it made a lot of sense. So hopefully now that those things get worked out, we're able to go and compete against them.
Yeah. And look, as I mentioned, like a few minutes ago, I think that's the biggest fight you can make. One of the biggest fights in the sport, the biggest fight in the heavyweight division. And the whole thing between Miocic and Jon Jones and an interim belt was because obviously Francis Ngannou had a knee injury and had to recover and all that. But now time keeps going by and we don't see any booking of Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. We heard that maybe it was over the summer in July, then it got pushed to September. We're in September now. We're here in December, but again, no guarantees. Do you feel like almost at this point, should an interim belt be forgotten? I mean, obviously, you mentioned how like Ngannou still needs to get checked by the doctor and see where we're at in the recovery and all that. But it seems we're already going through a lot of the sort of the time off of Ngannou of the recovery process. Do you feel like maybe we should just forget about an interim belt and then, maybe do Jon Jones and Ngannou? next?
Well, we're at the mercy of the promotion, so
Yeah.
I didn't feel that the last fight was justified for an interim, the Gane and Derek Lewis fight. I thought that that fight was a number one contender fight, especially when you talk about what Francis waited for when he had to fight Jairzinho. Jairzinho in that fight could have been an interim by the definition of what the UFC was saying. So now with the injury, I think injuries are a different story, Danny. I think that, like, okay, you're going to put the division on a back burner for a year, then maybe an interim is a justified position. The more and more I'm starting to understand the way this sport works, these guys, UFC, they have their slate of pay-per-views lined up for the next however many months. Right now, they're looking for something for December 10th, like a big pay-per-view to end the year. Now, where do they go in January? Where do they go in February? And where do they go in March? I think kind of plays into what they have to do lined up for December. So if Francis wasn't ready for December and they want to get another heavyweight, fight in before that, then Gane and Stipe or Gane and Jon Jones makes a lot of sense if Francis isn't able to go. But if they have something going on for February and March where we can plug right in and do something where we can get Francis and Jon Jones, then I say, why not wait until February? Because, right, like, we've already waited this long anyway. What's another couple months going to matter?
Yeah, that's kind of my train of thought, right? It's just a few more months. Like, why not? And look, again, we talked about how great Jon Jones is, and he may very well go in there and destroy Stipe Miocic. That's definitely a possibility. But I mean, Stipe Miocic is also Stipe Miocic. I mean, who's to count that guy out, right? So so I don't know. Maybe you lose the Jon Jones fight if things don't go right for him in his move to heavyweight. I don't know. That's why I kind of want to, in my opinion, directly that fight with Ngannou. I feel like that makes the most sense. But yes, you're right. They do need to fill pay-per-views. Usually they want a good title fight with that, even if it's an interim. So that sometimes dictate how fights are being made.
If I had my choice, Danny, like I don't want Jon Jones to have the opportunity to fight at heavyweight and not be us, because I don't want him to figure out anything or have to change. I want him to make adjustments on the fly with the Predator looking down at him. You know what I mean? So, by giving him a chance to go fight at heavyweight, he gets to go back to the drawing board and make certain adjustments and do certain things, whether it's strength and conditioning or cardio or, technical things, right? Like, I want him to have to figure that shit out with us in the cage, so.
Yeah, for sure. That's also a big learning experience for him, right? Like switching weight classes and just, I'm sure he'll take a lot from that. Even the fact that, like, it'll be, I think, his first fight week in UFC where he doesn't have to cut weight. Like, that's a whole thing within itself. I mean, there's so many wrinkles that come with fighting at heavyweight. So yeah, that's definitely a solid point. And you mentioned, like, you're obviously Ngannou's head coach. That's your main guy, but you also train others. How many people are you sort of taking under your wing nowadays?
As of late, I've actually kind of pulled back a little bit more. I think for me, just time consumption and energy has been important. And then just being around family. I have a daughter in high school, a daughter in junior high, and my son just started kindergarten, and, I'm coaching his football team. My daughter's got soccer all weekend. The other one's cheerleading for football. So, just honestly, like, sitting down with Henry Hooft and, Coach Dean Thomas and guys that have been in the sport for a long time, they've always been a great resource for me. And just talking about things outside of MMA, but more family stuff. And really, for me, focusing on the guys that are committed to the team, to the gym. Those are the ones I've been really trying to spend more time with. And then, other guys that maybe I can help bring up through the ranks as well, is important for me too. Like, I really loved, like, being able to get Chris Curtis where he's at today, myself and Nate and the team and everybody putting a lot of time in with Chris. And then, his life changed from a guy who didn't think he'd ever make it to now he's, ranked in the UFC. So that's always been a big part of my path and my journey is trying to get these guys into this situation where their lives are better at the end of it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that I wanted to ask you, right? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're an amazing coach, but you are a human, right? And there's only 24 hours in a day. Like, I guess what's the sweet spot or like the limit of number of fighters that you can take under your wing? Because there's only like so many fight weeks that you can go to, right? Like, I mean, there's got to be like a number, right?
Yeah, it's hard, man, because you're going to get into these scheduling conflicts, like, for example, we did like 7 weeks with Cody Garbrandt, and he got scheduled on October 1st, is the same day as Jeremy Kennedy and Max Roshkoff, two guys that I've worked with, for a long time. So, unfortunately, it's a schedule conflict, and I have to go with the guys that I've been working with for the last 5 years. So those things are going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's about, you know, the growth and making sure that the product in the cage is what's represented, and these guys are going out and getting wins. But man, you're right, man. The 24/7 and your phone's always on, and you know, guys are blowing you up and they need to talk or they need this or they need that. So your coaching hat is never off, man, when it comes to this. And there's no off season for us. You know, I got injuries and shoulder problems and neck problems and all this stuff. So you're holding on by duct tape right now and just trying to get by day to day.
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk about Cody Garbrandt. I want to ask you a few things about that. You had talked to the MMA Junkie Radio boys, and you had mentioned how, you know, you've loved working with Cody Garbrandt, and you think there's like so many tools there to work with, and obviously maybe some people, and hopefully this doesn't sound too harsh, but maybe they kind of see him as damaged goods given his current status of his career, right? He's taking on a lot of losses, but also like, you know, a lot of people just look back and be like, hey, not long ago he was, you know, doing the robot on Dominic Cruz, the greatest bantamweight to ever exist. Like what the hell happened? In your opinion, first of all, how long have you been working with Garbrandt now? Because he's in Vegas.
So when he moved out, I got to look now. I'm not even too sure. I feel like he's been out in Vegas for a minute now, maybe before, maybe February, I think he came out. So myself and Coach Jimmy Gifford were working with him quite a bit. And then obviously, you know, when I got back from London, the schedule conflict of, you know, the Bellator and this card. So he's been working with Dewey a lot now. But I mean, that's my biggest thing with Cody is just, you know, sticking to something and making sure that you're getting the terminologies and the verbiage and everything like set up to where you don't have like 12 different coaches, you know. And I think that's something that he mentioned to me in the past was kind of an issue with, he was trying to push too much and travel too much and do this. Just stick with one thing, man, and let that product be what's shown in the cage. And, you know, Dewey's been having a great year, and Dewey's a phenomenal coach. So I think for him and Dewey to kind of have that synergy is very important. But, you know, it's been great having him in the gym. And funny thing, man, like that's the one thing we talked about was, you know, I asked him, when's the last time you watched your Dominic Cruz fight? He's like, oh, I don't know when's the last time I go put that thing back on, man. Plug it in and go watch yourself and go remember what you're capable of doing. You know, I think he has some of the best vision in the game. When he fights with a clear focus and a clear mind, you know, the guy's pretty damn good. And a lot of people forget, man, like he comes to our room and we're obviously a wrestling pedigree gym, and this kid can wrestle, and Cody Garbrandt can get after it. He can wrestle. So, you know, and those are things too, like don't forget about your roots and what you're capable of doing in a full MMA skill set. Yeah.
And how is that conversation with Cody? And overall, how does it work if like you're a fighter and you just show up at Extreme Couture and try to have a talk with the guys, or how is it like to bring someone onto the team?
Well, you know, Cody's been a friend of mine for a long time, and that's just really been it. We've been friends. So whether I'm in his corner or not, I'm always going to be pulling for the guy. That's the main thing. So due to circumstances, I know that there's my son.
Yeah, I see him.
Due to circumstances, I know that like he had to move to Vegas. You know, he wanted to move to Vegas for some family issues more than anything. So by coming to Vegas, you know, inherently he came to Extreme Couture and started working with some of the teams. So it was just really just communication. I know, you know, him and Lance Palmer are close, and Lance and I are very close. We had our PFL run together. So Joe Benavidez, obviously, it's just more of a matter of does he fit the gym really, and do we fit him?
Yeah. And I guess you mentioned how like Dewey's also working with him, and I want to make sure to give credit to Dewey as well. You know, it's a team effort when working with these guys. But looking at sort of the Cody Garbrandt project, what are some of the things that you guys look to add? Is it that sort of the wrestling to have him be a little bit more, I guess, more versatile in different areas? Like, what exactly do you guys look to add, or what do you think is sort of the fix to get him back on track?
Honestly, I just think it's confidence, you know, and just reminders and letting him get in that flow state. I think is very important. So a lot of drills, you know, making sure that his body's healthy. He's been working over at Project Wellbeing with Sean Friedis, and they've done an amazing job of getting his body back to where it needs to be. You know, before the first cancellation, you know, he had some injuries that he was dinged up. And then he just went strictly working with Sean Friedis and them over at Project Wellbeing. And he comes back and I see his body. I'm like, dude, you look great. Like he looked like his body was where it needed to be. And like, you know, Danny, it's like your body is is doing one thing, your mind's going to follow that as well. So, and there's been a correlation there. I think with him being healthy and feeling healthy, he's sparring that way, and he feels like he can go through and put a good camp together because his body's following it.
Yeah, for sure. And I believe he fights in October, right? Against Ronnie Yaya. I know that fight was canceled. It was scheduled for August, if I'm not mistaken, but that got rescheduled, right?
Yeah, I got rescheduled. So the thing was, it was like when we were supposed to fight July 2nd, I believe. And we thought we would get rescheduled for like August, and then it got pushed all the way to like October.
Yeah.
So it was more the matchup that we wanted than anything. So when we talked about getting rebooked, did we want to do something earlier, or do we want to wait for Ronnie and then do it on a later time? And to me, it was just more the matchup I thought that made the best sense.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, man, I love this matchup, and I wish to see more of this. And I love Ronnie Yaya, all the respect in the world to him. But I feel like something that we don't see often in MMA, especially in the UFC, is tune-up fights. And again, I don't want to discredit Ronnie Yaya. In my opinion, he's, like kind of like the last of the Mohicans, this fighter that has like a very one-dimensional style, and it's awesome watching him just, kind of be in a good way, like stubborn to just bring the fight to the ground. And I love watching him fight, and certainly a very, very skilled fighter. But in terms of maybe what's been causing Cody issues in the past, I don't think maybe that's something that Ronnie Yaya can bring, since he's not like maybe an elite striker. His thing is more of the ground. Do you wish to see more of these type of fights as well? Because clearly, like, again, speaking about like stardom, that's there for Cody. And you just mentioned, like, go watch that Dominic Cruz fight. I mean, that's one of the best performances, ever, right? Like that was a complete showing. So would you like to see more of these kind of fights? I feel like we don't get enough of them in the UFC.
Yeah, I think you're right, Danny, but I think we're at the mercy of the promotion and what they're trying to push. And
yeah,
like you said, man, Ronnie Yaya is no walkover. He's a very tough fight. But I think it is a favorable matchup for Cody in the regards of he uses his wrestling well to anti-wrestle, to keep it on the feet. And I think if Ronnie's not able to take this fight to the ground, it's going to be probably a quick night. I think Cody's going to be able to find his openings and pick this guy apart and put him out. But, again, like if Ronnie loves making these fights ugly, and jumps on those single legs and drags you down and gets on your back. And, next thing you know, the round's over and you didn't do one damn thing the whole round. So I think Cody's just got to make sure he uses his cage control to his ability and make sure he anti-wrestles. But this should be a favorable matchup for him, and I think the UFC kind of did us a good favor by that.
Yeah, looking forward to that fight and just the reinvention overall of Cody. I don't want to give up on Cody just yet. I know some people are kind of, maybe they don't believe in him as much. Obviously, he's not on the greatest streak, but just go watch that Dominic Cruz fight. I mean, it's just insane what he was able to do that night. And now switching gears, but sticking to the bantamweight division, Aljamain Sterling. More or less, I know he's kind of been going back and forth, and obviously he like came up on the East Coast. But how much training is he doing at Extreme Couture now? Is this like full time his gym now?
Well, I don't know if like he's going to be here. I think all the way up until September 24th. I think he said. Mm-hmm. So right now, pretty much all camp has been at the gym and at the PI. So Tuesdays we have our day, me and him one-on-ones, where we just kind of go over game plan stuff, and then we do some drills right after with a partner, and then we do pads and then drills right after, and then the Thursdays and Saturdays have been our sparring days, and then Mondays in the gym with the grappling. So he's been doing a great job, man. And then he'll kind of do his one-on-ones or his individual drills with some of the guys that he selects, but I think he's going to go home on the 24th and finish up camp with Coach Longo and the crew back on Long Island. And then he's going to get out to Abu Dhabi pretty early. I think he's going to get out there like October 8th. So he has some time to acclimate. So, last camp we did 6 and 6. So he did 6 weeks with us and then 6 weeks back home and finished up in Long Island. And really, honestly, man, it's just to whatever he's comfortable with and what's working for him. I think what it really boils down to, Danny, is training partners and, comfortability and guys that he gets to work with that kind of fit that style of his opponent. So we love having him, man. He's a great guy, and we just try to stay in communications with the guys back in Long Island because they're ultimately going to be the ones cornering.
Yeah, and I've met you in person at a PFL event. I'm forgetting which one a few months back, and obviously you're a very big dude. And then I saw some recent photos of you and Sterling side by side, and I'm like, what? Like I kind of had to sort of do a double take. He's big, right? Like he gets pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, man. He's big. He's a big 135er, So
yeah.
I think when he actually talks about moving up, maybe later on in his career or however this, fight shakes out, and where Merab's at, I think he would comfortably make the 145-pound division due to his size. Like, we have him and Danny Ige spar quite a bit. Julian Arosa's in the gym. And I think Aljamain's physique and body type really would fit in the featherweight division if that's something he ever decided to do later on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and he was shredded. I mean, he had a six pack. It's not like he was like big, not the good way. So yeah, certainly I saw it, and I'm like, oh, because I've seen him during fight week, and when they're cutting weight, it's a different story. But like you see his frame, sort of a normal day to day, and he's a big dude.
Yeah, I make him put his shirt on all the time. Yo, put your shirt on, bro. You walking around like that.
Hey, you got to get those Instagram pics,
Yeah, for sure.
Get the right filter and everything,
Yep.
Yeah. And let's talk about this fight with TJ Dillashaw. He's an interesting puzzle, right? Like he's obviously coming off some layoff, but he's done so much at bantamweight. You like that matchup for Sterling?
I love the matchup just in the regards of, I love what TJ's done. I don't get into the whole, the EPO and all that stuff. I just don't. Like, I just look at the body of work, and obviously I'm a Dwayne Ludwig guy. My lineage is under Dwayne, and I have nothing but respect for them and what those guys are doing. I think his last fight against Sandhagen was brilliant. I thought they had a brilliant game plan, and then they made some great adjustments after the knee injury and attacking the low kicks and getting into the clinch game. So very, very close fight. I think the fight could have gone either way, but having a 2-year layoff and then going in and fighting a guy like Corey Sandhagen and being able to get the win out of that fight was very, very impressive, man. So I know we got our work cut out for us, and again, like, none of this stuff matters to me other than competing. I'm just a big competitor, man. Like, I don't look in the politics. I don't look in the shit talk. I don't do any of that stuff. I just want to put our best foot forward and put a game plan together and go out and execute.
Yeah, for sure. I think stylistically, I love this matchup, but something that I really enjoy is I think Aljamain silenced a lot of haters and a lot of critics against Peter Yan in his last fight. And then against this one, I feel like he's going to get another chance to really sort of solidify himself as champion and shut up the doubters, because Peter Yan is an amazing talent, but he doesn't have the same amount of history that TJ Dillashaw has. So I think this is sort of a double whammy back to back, getting these two fights. Do you feel like that's the case? Like, after this fight, like, if you're doubting him at this point, if you were to pick up a victory, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think then at that point you're just hating on the kid.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing a great job, and obviously the first Piotr Yan fight wasn't the way any of us wanted it to shake out. No one wanted that outcome. But, also you got to remember, like, Aljo didn't do anything wrong. He took the belt home the way he did, and it wasn't by what he wanted. I tell you this, though, like, anytime we post a picture with Aljo now, there's not 8 million people putting clown faces and saying paper champ anymore, because he went out and did his thing in the second fight and got the victory. So that was although I wasn't in the corner, I was a part of the camp. That fight felt very good from a human element, because I saw firsthand what that put Aljo through, man. And it wasn't anything that he did wrong. Like, he turned into this clown and villain and troll and this and that. At the end of the day, man, this kid works his ass off. He's a great teammate. He's a guy that comes in our gym, and you see him mopping our mats and helping out people and waiting around for sparring and helping out other fighters in our room. So he's a consummate teammate and a guy you'd really cheer for.
Yeah, certainly. And also, apart from just a great person, I would say probably tied with Charles Oliveira. I think the race is up there. But as far as back takes in MMA, that's as good as it gets.
The backpack, man.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got a Jansport. He's got a top quality a backpack there. And as far as what's next for you, what's the next fight you're cornering or your next trip?
So actually, I have Ian Kudalaba next week, but I'm not able to corner. I had a prior engagement in Austin, so going out and coaching, helping out a gym out there, and then going to the Alabama-Texas game. So it was something that, like we talked about earlier in the segment, where, like, I have these things that I want to do and I want to be a part of, instead of always missing out on fun stuff. And for cornering fights, this one was, I told Ewan back then, I was like, look, man, I'll help you. I'll do everything you can for camp, but I won't be able to be in your corner. I want to do some stuff for me as well. So I'll be pulling for him. I'll be helping him out all this fight week, and I leave town on Thursday. So, but we'll have Ewan on that card. Julian Rosso will be on the card, so we'll have Coach Eddie there. And then I'll be in the corner for Daniel Zellhuber on September 17th. And then I don't know if I have anything else the rest of September. Then we head out to Long Beach for Jeremy Kennedy and Max Roshkoff.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like a busy schedule. And as you mentioned, there's no rest in mixed martial arts, right? You just go the entire year round, year after year.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So the travel is going to be fun for me. I actually talked to Rafion yesterday. I'm actually going to try to head out to Houston and work with him out there a little bit more because, it's hard when you have a family and everything's set up at home to pick up and go out and do camp. So I think for me, I'm going to try to go out there a couple days a week and see him and get him ready. He's out working with Yves Edwards right now. So just trying to get our game plan solidified for the December 9th fight. So it'll be fun, man, but all good stuff.
Yeah. All right, Eric. Well, I appreciate the time. Enjoy your time off. Enjoy your trip because you certainly deserve it. And looking forward to, all these upcoming fights that are in the calendar.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me on.